Hello and welcome back to Selling Oxford. I'm your host, Danica, and with me today I have Sarah and Nicole from Whitewood Design Studio. I'm so excited that they agreed to join me. I met Nicole actually because we sold a house together years and
My
years
first
ago. Well, how many
deal.
years ago now? Yeah, I know. And it's actually something that's so funny about that. I think about it a lot because the showing went off without a hitch. And like, as I was pulling out of the driveway, you sent me a text and you were like, okay, like, when can I expect an offer from you? And I was like, damn, girl. And then you're like, this is my first deal. I was like, you're going to be fine. Like, you got it. So anyway, that was my first experience with Nicole on her first sale, and it was great. And then Sarah, I actually met through you, Nicole, because a little bit later I had a listing that needed staging and you were like, actually, like I'm doing staging. So can you tell me a little bit about like how you guys decided to do that and how you went from like deciding to sell real estate and now you also like help do staging?
Yeah, we actually, Nicole helped us buy our first home. First, it was a rental property, and then our first home. So that's how we met. And then we just got really close in conversation, and we were both interested in home decor and had the same sort of style. And we just thought we should join forces and do it together.
Yeah. We
Right.
also, I think, well, we knew we were alike in our personal style, and I had some listings coming up that I knew would benefit from staging.
Hmm.
And I saw an opportunity, I think, in the local market, and Sarah agreed that there was probably, while there are stagers, there's always an opportunity to, have more stagers.
Hmm.
So we thought, well, maybe we'll give it a shot. And then Sarah ended up buying
Yes.
your house is the first house we staged.
Yeah.
So
Oh
then yeah, it
yeah,
just
I
kind of
forgot about that.
yeah. So then it just kind of has grown from there, and it's more about yeah, we both just love it. Just the the creative aspect of it, coming in, seeing the possibility of a home, a room, a
Right.
space, and all it could be, and then
Being able to show the
trans yeah,
potential buyers the potential of it too.
yeah,
Yeah, well, and that's something that like I really like as a real estate agent, something that I really appreciate out of stagers is that like I want the house to look at its best, but I don't want it to look like it's staged. Like I
yeah,
want it to look lived in and realistic. And I feel like this not a knock to some stagers, but I feel like some stagers style is like a bit glitzy, and so all of their stuff is like crystal and glass
yeah,
and silver, and in my opinion that's very specific to like one style of house,
yeah,
and then if you show like a 60s bungalow that has like all of this like glitzy, you're like, this doesn't match. And it looks like, not to say it doesn't look nice because it looks pretty and the photos are nice, but I just feel like you're not really showcasing that home in its like truest form. You're kind of like putting lipstick on a pig, for lack of a better term. And I feel like it doesn't always do the home justice. Whereas I feel like what you guys do is like you've curated like a really sort of like organic collection of like pieces so that no matter what the home is in you would believe at least that someone lived like that instead of being like, wow, this is staging for
I
selling,
think
if that makes
um,
sense.
it's always felt important for us. I think you would agree that
Yeah.
that if the space feels approachable and like authentic
Right.
when we walk away from it, like we want it to feel like it's an actual home and not a showroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Showroom is perfect. That's exactly what I was trying to say in that
Uh,
long-winded response that I gave earlier. But I just know, like, in the experiences that I've had using you, and I've used you, like, I don't stage all of my listings. It has to be the right listing and the right client that, is willing to put their stuff in storage for
yeah,
however long. And I mean, in some cases, houses just don't need it, but when they
totally.
do, I really appreciate that. And I've always had like amazing feedback. Like the first one you guys did for us was when the market like shit the bed in like
Yeah.
2021, I want to say,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
little house near the hospital in Woodstock.
Yeah.
And we had such bad luck. Like, and she had already bought, like, there, all these things were like going bad for us. It was one of the most stressful transactions that I've ever dealt with. And then you guys just kind of like swooped in and like you saved my butt and my client's butt. And like, she was so incredibly grateful, and me too, because you know this, Nicole, like at some point there's only so much you can do as an agent. Like you can set the price and you can take the nice photos and you can do the staging and you can do it all. But if the market is not, cooperating,
Yeah.
then you're kind of stuck. And I was in that place, which is
That
always
was
like a
that
hard place.
terrible time where you got stuck in that situation where the first interest rate had just
Hmm.
announcement had
That's
happened,
right.
and everything shifted so rapidly
Yeah.
for everyone. And yeah, we're so grateful that we got to be a part of that one because um,
Oh,
it
it's
really
like I
did.
have goosebumps now, like thinking
Yeah,
about it.
it
It
was a
was so
testament to the power of
stressful.
staging,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would looked like a whole new house. Like,
Mhm.
and it wasn't, I didn't even think it looked that bad with her stuff in there, but
And it
just,
didn't. It didn't.
Just rearranging the
but
furniture and a fresh eye.
yeah.
And
And that's what it is so much that we find, right? And
Hmm.
it's just coming in with a pair of fresh eyes, and
Yeah.
shifting what, even if it's just an arrangement. And sometimes we don't need to come in and do a full stage, right? We
Right.
offer, we'll come in and we'll do a consultation and give a list of suggestions of removals, rearrangements. And sometimes we just do it like what we call accessory stages.
Right.
And sometimes that's all it needs, because it is a daunting thing, especially if you have a busy life with a family, to, fully remove everything from your house and put it in storage and live in it, right? We both have young families, and we realize what kind of how
Right.
disruptive
Chaos.
that can be to a life.
Yeah.
So if there's an opportunity for that not to happen, and we see a possibility elsewhere, like, we'll always try to make that happen for the clients too.
Yeah, and I think something like you said, you don't always need a full stage. I noticed you guys did actually at the house that you bought, Sarah, is that you changed out the lighting. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that a lot of stagers do that. I don't have a whole lot of experience using stagers, honestly, but I remember you guys, I think you maybe documented it online, how there were like fans and then you put in, and so
Mm-hmm.
like, a couple $100 in new lighting totally changed the feel of that whole house.
Totally.
And like, to me, like, that's adding value that you're not taking away when you're done staging. You're
Yeah.
not like, okay, well, now I'm taking this table and this couch and the house just looks like back to normal once it's gone. But you guys made a pretty drastic difference in the feel of that house just by changing out the lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And we can give those suggestions as well to
Yeah.
potential homeowners or realtors when we go in to do those consultations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We
And
always
I,
prepare a recommendations list.
mhm.
And sometimes it looks like stuff like that, right? It's not saying, oh, you need us to come in and, remove everything and bring about, like, sometimes just doing that stuff has enough of an impact that it will ultimately
Yeah.
lead to a faster, smoother sale for your clients.
Yeah, I do that. Like, I'll recommend a lot that like my clients change out their doorknobs because they'll
Mm.
have like old like brass style. Though I know brass is coming back, which I hate, but it's coming back. And every time I see a brass doorknob, I'm like, you should put a black doorknob on there because it's totally going to change the feel of your house. But and
Totally.
that's like little, but that's like the extent of my like design eye, like I need some just like, I always kind of joke with my clients when I'm there at listing appointments, like, I'm really good at my job, but I'm a terrible photographer. So like, I'm going to bring in a photographer to do the right job, the kind of job you need. And the same with staging. Like, and I know like sometimes that's kind of a hard like bridge even to like approach with your clients when like they might be proud of the way their house looks and you're like, you should do some staging.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so often it's an emotional thing, right? And
Hmm.
especially you have to really feel out what people are open to, and it can be really offensive to people, no matter how hard you try to make it not be. And I get it. If
I
someone came
know.
into my space and it's like you feel like it's a part of you, right? So often, so it's a
Right.
delicate dance for sure. But ultimately, I think, and this is why this is probably leading into something different, but this is why we ultimately came up with this concept we have called stage to stay, because so often after we come into a space and stage a property for sale, we have
Mm-hmm.
sellers saying like,
They wish they
"Oh,
could
I
keep
wish we could
it.
just keep it all," or like that you could just do this for me to
Oh,
live in. So
and you're like, actually.
yeah, we could.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
I
yeah,
think that's actually really important because, like, and I don't know if you experience this too, but like, I feel like there are some real estate agents who, and this is just my opinion, I've never actually run across this, but based on like what I see from like people's you like social media content or the way that they like market themselves, is that I worry that there are agents out there that are like, okay, you want to sell? Like, let's sell, because like that's a sale for me. And for me, like if someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about selling, I'm like, okay, well, why? And, what's your long-term goal? And why do you want to move? Is it because you need to be closer to the school? Or is it because like you don't love the paint color in your bathroom? Like, especially as we've been navigating this like tricky market for the last couple of years, like, I'm not going to lie. I've had, friends reach out to me that are like, hey, should I move? And I'm like, honestly, like, it's super volatile. Like, it's one thing if you're buying and selling in the same market, then it doesn't really matter because it's going to work itself out in the wash. But if you're like looking to upgrade, to a bigger home or even downsize, you want to make sure that like the market is in a good spot for you to make that move. And I would rather talk someone out of that if it's in a bad market and get that deal like in a year or two when it's like a bit, safer than just be like, well, I haven't done a sale in a while. So like, sure, like let's list your house because I need business. So I'm actually really like glad to hear that you do that like stage to sell because I'm always like worried for people that they're just getting talked into something because
yeah,
it works well for whomever, like when you're
yeah.
going to get your oil changed and they're like, oh, actually we could do all this other extra stuff to your car. And you're like, oh no, I just want my oil changed. And I think it's hard for me. I struggle to like show up in our industry sometimes because it feels like people are trying to like talk people into moving. And in my opinion, like that's not my job. My job is to just like help you through whatever transition that you want to go through. So something else that I wanted to ask you, because you guys both sort of like wear multiple hats. I mean, we all had kids like within what, like a couple months of each other, I think. So we all have like babies still. And then like Sarah, so you do your staging part, but then you and your husband do like, renos sounds like blase. I feel like you're doing a lot more than like just renos. Like it's a whole.
Yeah.
So for me to be like, you do home renos is like not what I'm trying to say, but you can explain it a bit
Oh,
more.
that's totally
And then
right. Yeah,
Nicole, you have your like two things, right? And plus your mom and like who knows? Like you made those cookies on Instagram and I was so annoyed that day. I was like, you would be good at that. Like screw off. So tell me more about like I also find myself kind of, you know, wearing multiple hats, not just like in my life, but in my career. Like I kind of like to have like a few things going at once. So, I am a realtor and I'm, doing a podcast and I have the Moms Club because I feel like then I'm kind of satisfying multiple parts of my personality instead of like just going all in on real estate. And so can you guys kind of speak to that? And also like, why do you think that you ventured out into like multiple avenues for your businesses?
for myself, I feel like I always have had lots of interests, all in similar areas, but just lots of different things I enjoy or would like to pursue. So initially, I went to school for interior design, and then I knew I always wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. So then that's where I came in to do the design and build team because Jaden has all his contracting experience as well with home
Mm-hmm.
restoration, that kind of thing. And then the staging thing was when I met Nicole. It was honestly something we thought of together, and like we said before, with us having the same style and seeing an opportunity for it, we thought to go for that. And then I definitely have other ideas always running in my brain of things I would love to
Right.
do. It's just getting there and getting to that point to be ready to do it. But yeah, I
Sure.
would to like have a home decor store or different aspects that are related to our industry and what we do, but just have all different
Hmm.
kinds of doing that.
Um,
Yeah, it sort of like satisfies your like curiosity that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so for me, well, speaking of the cookies thing, you probably didn't know, but when I graduated university, it was I went to school for English and I wanted to be a teacher. And at
Okay.
that time, I started working at Boston Pizza as a server, and there were, I think, um, three other servers there at that time who could not get teaching jobs because it was that period of time where it was just,
Whoa.
yeah. So I was like, well, I'm already so in debt from university. I'm not going to go to
Right.
teacher's college right now if I can't get a job at the end of it. So that
Hmm.
led to me, and I've always been, I guess, I don't know if artistic is the right word, but a creative person who likes to do stuff with her hands. Basically, I like to make things.
Hmm.
And I got this other desk job at Drive Test, which was really hard on my spirit, as like tough job.
I can
People,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would come home at the end of the
Yeah.
day and I would bake to as a therapy, I guess. And it was a creative outlet that was great.
Yeah.
So that sort of
Hmm.
that became a business, and I ended up making wedding cakes for a lot of local people. So huge opportunity to build relationships and also build
Yeah.
business savviness and marketing savviness when social media was just sort of exploding,
Right.
and I saw this opportunity to market myself there. So
Hmm.
that kind of, yeah, one fact. I guess I have always have so many interests as well, same as all of us, but
Right.
really realizing that the creative part of my life was super important and something that I had to feed at all times, I think, in order to feel
Yeah.
fulfilled and happy. So,
Hmm.
but then also always, like when my husband and I bought our first home in 2016 and we renovated it completely and I designed it completely. So before the English school part of it, I had applied to school for interior design at Ryerson, and I was on a
Oh,
wait
no
list.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't have the formal training of it, but always been like a massive interest of mine. So
Yeah. I'm
designing our
obsessed
whole
with it
home,
too.
yeah, sharing it.
Yeah.
So that whole process, and then ultimately realizing that real estate was something that I had always wanted to do. Like for my entire life, I've been begging my mom to take me through open houses, pointing out these
Oh,
properties
really?
that are, oh, always, like always obsessed with open
Yeah.
houses, seeing inside people's homes, and just like constantly on realtor.ca, even though I have no business being on realtor.ca. Like
Right. Yeah.
I can't buy a property, but just
Yeah.
so interested in it. So,
Right.
um, and realizing that I felt like the time has come. I either have to do this or not do this. And at that point, I
Right.
realized that Aria was closing the college.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I have to do this now. I'm signing up now. Um, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, basically, so got my real estate license, love every part of the job, but I'm feeling like I need to have a creative outlet. Not that I can't be creative in marketing myself and showing who I am, right? But
Sure.
that talking to Sara about it, realizing that there's probably an opportunity here to have this staging aspect alongside my
Right.
real estate business that allows me to fulfill that. And
Yeah.
it definitely has. The one interesting thing about it that I may have already talked to you about this before is that we've always felt a little hesitant to really I guess, share my full involvement in the business because we've always been worried that it
Right.
will
Like
discourage
you
other
think the
agents from
competition won't
using
hire
us.
you?
Yes,
Really?
because we are such a competitive
Uh,
industry, and I don't want to sound rude, but like there's a lot of ego at play often I find in our competitive industry, and it's
there is.
scary to
I
the
just,
idea of our business to
yeah,
think that people would choose to not use our business because they think I'm a threat, like I'm going to try and snipe clients or something like
their
that, right?
clients. Yeah.
Which is like,
That's so funny. Like, because for me, as someone who is, I guess, considered your competition, though, like that's not
Yeah.
real, in my
Yeah.
opinion, you know?
Yeah.
Like I mean, obviously currently there's not a whole lot of business to be had for everybody
Mhm.
because there are so many of us. But I also just like my opinion on it is that like the world is abundant and I'm not going to be able to handle all the clients. So like, you know, and some people are going to like you for one reason and me for another reason entirely, right? So,
Mhm.
but I have also felt this way where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and to be fair, there are a lot of like egos in real
Yeah.
estate. Though I will say I haven't come across too many like in Oxford County.
Yeah,
I
I
think for
agree.
the most part, my experience with Oxford County realtors, I think it's just like this small town thing. But no, I totally understand where you're feeling. Like I even felt that way. Like we were talking just earlier before recording this about that like reel I posted where Erica was like, all realtors are the same. And I just kind of thought it was like funny. And then someone was like, I totally disagree. And I was like, oh, like I didn't really anticipate, like I wasn't posting that kind of to ruffle feathers, but now like, did I kind of like, you know, step in it a little bit? And do I have to like recover from this? Like, I don't want to, like piss off all my coworkers, you know?
I think
But,
it's as agents, I think we had already talked about this, but it's important to realize that while that might feel a little triggering is the word I guess I want to use to hear
right.
that like
Yeah.
people from the outside who have no interest in real estate feel that way about realtors. It's kind of important to hear
Mm-hmm.
that, I guess, because it gives us more motivation to share what should set us apart, I guess, and more of ourselves as
Yeah.
who we are as people, right? To sort
Right.
of
And it's
differentiate
funny. I was
ourselves.
talking to someone else. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so actually why I think it's so important to like always be diversifying yourself. Like, so you have like, you know, you're baking and you do document like a lot of your house. And now you have this staging, which I definitely don't think you should hide the fact that you're a part of it. Well, now you don't have a choice because I'm going to post this podcast online. So everyone's going to know that you're doing it. But I think like, it's super important to showcase multiple parts of yourself in your like in not just in your life as a whole for your mental health to like have lots of things to keep you, you know, happy, but also if you're looking at it from like a personal brand point of view and a marketing point of view, like we know that like very few people are like searching for the number one realtor of all time when they're going to list their house. You know, they're like, okay, do I know a realtor? Yes. Okay, I'm going to call them. Or and if I don't, I'm going to ask my friends who they've used and had a good experience with, right? Just like you do with anybody. If I need a cleaner, I'm not going to like Google number one house cleaner in Oxford County. I'm just going to ask a bunch of people who they've had a good experience with.
Yeah.
And so I think that that gets lost in the real estate industry because people are like, I think, hung up on like just displaying themselves as being the best. And the best is not up to us to decide, right? Like some people need someone who's really good at one thing, and some people need something that's really good at another thing. And so if the goal really is to get as many people as you can to like know, like, and trust you, then only talking about how good you are at real estate is like not really the way to go
Yeah.
about that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to like, you know, the way I think about branding is like braiding kind of. So like when I started in real estate, I didn't know anything and I learned what I could by listening to podcasts. And the podcast I listened to the most was called Being Boss. And one of the hosts was like a brand. She owned like a branding, like design company, and it's called Braid. And she talks a lot about branding in that podcast and how it's important to be like, okay, so Nicole, you and I, for example, we are both realtors. That's one thing we have in common. We also have little kids. That's another thing we have in common, you know? And so like the more things we know that we have in common with each other, the more comfortable we're going to be talking to each other. Right.
Mhm.
And so like, I think you need to be mindful about that as well when you're putting out content, you know, like, okay, so some people are going to like me or know me because of real estate. that's honestly pretty few how many people are just going to know me because of real estate, because I also do the mom club, and I also like kind of make a point of like embarrassing myself on the internet, and like, you know, like there's like lots of things that I put out there because I want to put out lots of lines and attract as many people as I can. And the expectation isn't that they're all going to hire me, but maybe, you know, 1% of them will. And so the more people I attract to myself, the better.
Yeah.
And so you too, in your experience with business, like, sure, okay, you didn't want, you know, other realtors to see you staging because they may see you as a threat. But how many potential customers are going to see you staging and be like, that's amazing. I'm going to need staging. I should, like, I feel now, I kind of feel like I shouldn't give you this advice because it's going to like take
No,
clients
no,
away
no.
from me. But no,
No,
I think it's like,
I completely agree with what you're saying, and I've always felt like too it's important. A lot of clients or people that are entering a real estate journey don't really realize how much time they're going to be spending with that person for and
mhm.
for a
Yeah,
consolidated
years
period of
sometimes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's important to showcase who you are as a person and your personality, because you're basing, like, yes, we do all have the same essential job, but you've got
Right.
to choose a person that you feel is going to work with your personality. Like, you have to feel a connection, like, oh, something about them makes me feel like we're going to mesh well and that we're going to work together well
Right.
and making these goals be met, essentially. So I think the more, and I think this goes for everyone as a business owner, the more we can share of our authentic selves and what we're about, is better, right? In my
Right.
opinion.
Because at the end of the day, like in every business, the like you need to be making like building relationships, right? That's how
Yeah.
you're getting
Right.
people in the door or people calling you.
Right.
And so yeah, just like even yeah, showing up and showing your face in your stories every day, no matter what you're talking about, then people
Yeah.
are they're going to understand like how you speak, or they're going to, you
Yeah.
know, just see your face and think you look nice, you know, like there's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah.
And not only that, but just even for you guys, for you, Sarah, too, like, so yeah, you can talk about, you know, staging, but also like the design and build thing that you have going on with your husband is so cool. Like, I would love to do that. My husband hates working on stuff around the house. It's like his least favorite thing to do. Like, we installed new floors last summer and we don't have trim on still. Like, it's just not a
It's always
priority.
those little
So
things.
we still have like the spacers between like the laminate and the wall, like holding the floor on. We're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we'll get to it, you know, when we get to it. It's a
Yeah.
bit problematic now that our daughter's like picking them out and like chewing on them or bringing them to us, but eventually it will get done. But I just think like, yeah, like, so you build those connections with whoever hires you to do that, and you're able to be like, oh, and I do staging, you know, and then, oh, you do staging, like, yeah, with another realtor. And so like, if you ever need a realtor, I'm actually like, it's this, the opportunities are endless. And I think that there's people kind of get so like tunnel focused, and not just realtors, people in lots of businesses do that. So that's something that I've always thought was like super clever that you guys are doing, whether it's like intentional or not, but you do a good job of kind of showcasing that. And like, yeah, I don't know, I just like really appreciate it. And so I'm like pumped that you came on here because I really wanted to like pick your brains about that.
Well, I have to say that I
Oh,
think what you and Britt have done with the Moms Club, the village you were promised, like, that's the best line ever.
yeah,
I think it's
I think
yeah,
so
I think
too.
it's just the greatest thing ever that you guys have come together and done this for the community. Truly. So
I like, that is a funny one. Like, and I think too, like the main like lesson I've learned is like, don't discount your ideas. You know, like, it's how many times do you have an idea and you're like, oh, but
yeah.
that's not gonna, you know,
Yeah,
people aren't like that. Are
where
gonna think I'm like a loser, or like, you know, like you can talk yourself out of almost anything. And
Yeah.
honestly, my experience building that like brand or community, I don't really know. It's not a business, like we're not making money doing it. But it's like, it was such a creative endeavor to kind of learn how to use social media without like I think because I've all like since I've had my social media accounts, I've been a real estate agent. So I've always in the back of my mind being like, is this going to convert? Am I doing a good job growing my business online? Because if not, I'm going to have to get a job, you know? Like, and so even though it's not in my messaging, it's kind of always in the back of my mind. Like, you know, you can't say this, you can't show up like this because people are perceiving you as a real estate agent. And with
Right.
the mom club, like I'm a mom, you know, like there's no rules. Like you can show up in whatever way that you want. So it was
Yeah.
a really good, like, obviously that wasn't the goal to like learn how to use social media better, but it really did like kind of give me permission to just show up as I am. Um, and it has kind of bled into the rest of my, like now I'm doing a podcast and I never would have probably done this if I hadn't had that experience because I think also because the feedback we get from them is so like, you're so approachable. Like, thank God, you're talking about how hard, you know, toddlers are instead of like, I think there's a lot of content online that's either like always trying to spin it positive and you're like, look, I love my kids, don't get me wrong, but like sometimes I want to rip my hair out, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to talk about that in a public space, but it's kind of taboo.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
it's just you guys noticed that obviously we're in a different time than we used to be. Like where my
right,
mom would take me to a little like preschool play group and talk to other moms, where you guys saw
right.
this. There's obviously you can see from the response from creating the moms club that there's a
Hmm.
need for it. Like we're all looking for
Yeah,
this honest relationship with other moms,
right,
where we can find a connection through like our shared experiences. But it's
right,
and like you saw an opportunity that the way to start doing that was online locally
right.
though.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah,
yeah, so I think it's just amazing because times have changed, right? And but you went about it I think in the exact right way to
right.
first build a community online and then start the mom walks, and I just think it's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. And it's cool too because it was a good exercise in like being able to remove myself from what I'm doing. Like, yes, Britt and I put the idea together, but that thing grew legs that I
Yeah,
never could have known was going to happen, you know? Like,
because
yeah, we
there's a
plan a
need for
walk
it.
every
Yeah,
yeah. Well, and you're right. Like, too, when you think about like what our parents had, and we didn't like, I had my first kid 3 months before, you know, the world shut down for
yeah,
COVID. So,
yeah,
like, my parents, like, I mean, my parents worked shift work in a factory, and so it was a little bit different, but like, they had a community, you know, and they did have what do they call them? Like tertiary spaces or something, like
mm-hmm.
third I don't know what that word is.
Yeah,
I'm not going to ever figure it out. But they had, you know, yeah, playgroups. And like, not to say Oxford County has early on, you
yeah.
know, in lots of different areas. And we were sharing those calendars to the point where they were like, you can stop sharing these. Like, all our things are full now.
But
So,
it's
like,
so
we don't have
specific
room.
to the COVID thing too, right? Like I had a baby
Right.
during COVID too, and there was no opportunity for that. I was very grateful to have had my first child prior to that, so I did experience like we went to the
Right.
library for play groups and stuff too. But it's so
Mm-hmm.
important to think about like what it meant for first time moms during COVID, right? And what it has meant
Yeah.
then, because it did change things so drastically.
Yeah, my first,
Well,
my first kid was
especially, oh,
during
sorry.
COVID.
Go ahead, Sarah.
That's okay. I was just gonna say my daughter was born during COVID too, and that was my first kid, and
Yeah,
it was just all I knew basically.
totally
There was
different
nothing
experience.
available,
Yeah,
and then having
Well,
Bennett.
yeah. And yes, exactly. And I think too, like coming from it, because that was my first baby. Like I had her in January and then like the world shut down, what,
yeah,
like March or something. And I think like at least in my experience, I have like this like really bad habit of just thinking like I'm just not being tough enough, you know, like my family's healthy and like, yeah, I'm like really isolated and struggling, but like at least you're healthy and it's actually not so bad. And like you don't know what you don't know. So you're like, why am I really struggling? And also like now that I know that I have ADHD and that it manifests usually in women once they have kids because it's like this overstimulation is like really like a pain and you really struggle to like And I was just like, I don't know, maybe I still have postpartum depression, but it always happens like a year after I have a baby that like I just cannot deal.
Yeah.
And no, because that's when they start like getting into stuff and you always have to be like aware of what they're doing, but your brain is also aware of 700 million other things at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're like, I'm like, oh, it's just like postpartum rage. And my therapist is like, no, girl, that is
Yeah.
ADHD, you know? But, and so I didn't know that at the time. I just was like, man, like, I'm struggling and this is hard. And like, am I like, should I just not have been a mom is what I used to think a lot of the time. And I wasn't sure that I wanted kids ever. Like my husband and I weren't always like, yeah, we want kids. We were like, okay, well, you know, not yet. And if we do have kids, great. And if we don't have kids, that's great too. Like I never was like, I need to be a mom. Like I was like focused on working and we went on vacation all the time and it just wasn't really on our radar. And then we've decided to go for it and had a baby. And I was like, so hard on myself. I was like, I knew I shouldn't have been a mom. Like, what did I do? Like, and of course you like love this baby so much. And so the duality of being like, I have never loved anything so much in my life. And also I don't know if I should have done this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not thriving. So just like, it was really hard to be like, do I say this on the internet? You
Totally.
know? But
Yeah.
like,
There's probably
I
so many,
did. And
there's
people wrote,
always people feeling the same way.
Always.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
was
interesting to me
shocked.
that you mentioned the 1 year mark because I've felt that way for so long. Like because I am a busybody by nature. Like I'm not like
Hmm.
a chill person at all
Right.
in
Yeah.
any way, any
Yeah.
part of life really. And I think
Right.
it comes down to the ADHD thing where I like, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm the exact same way. Once my babies are on the move,
Ugh.
I really start to struggle. And I remember with my first son thinking, because my mom was a stay at home mom and I was raised in, I always thought I wanted to raise my kids in the same way I was raised. I thought that I would have this desire to be a stay at home mom and spend all my, and like it would just feel like that. Um, and I was
Yeah.
really hard on myself when it didn't feel like that. Once I started to approach the 1 year mark with my oldest son, I realized I don't think I can do this. And I started to be really hard on myself about it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's happened with both of my other boys. Like once I got to the 1 year part and they're busy, like I always say I could have 20 newborns because they
Oh,
just,
all day.
yeah, but I can't, once they start to be on the move, I really start to struggle with how, yeah, just managing it. So it's
Hmm.
interesting because I feel like I've never really talked about that with anyone else. And it really is always around the 1 year mark that I start to feel like
Yeah.
I'm suffering.
Because I think if you are like me, like I am constantly like battling ideas, you know, even with this podcast, like I've changed my mind probably 20 times since I recorded my first episode on Monday about like how I want it to feel and what I want to say and like how I want to showcase it online because it's just like my brain is always doing that whether I want it to or not. And so then when your kid is like constantly being a kid and like
Yeah.
Casey eats so much food right now. I'm just like always getting food. And I'm like, there's no way you're still eating. Like I haven't eaten in hours and I've been feeding you snacks. Like, and then it's the mess that you have to clean up and then they're sticky and then they poop and you have to change the diaper and then they're climbing on the couch and they're going to break their neck. And it's just like, because that's always so constant, which of course it is, they're a baby. And like, there's nothing wrong with that
You want
behavior.
it
It's
to
just
be
like
like that at the same time.
your
Yeah.
brain is like, I want to do other things. And like,
Yeah.
this is pretty menial, like just, you know, being a pylon for you all day. But then, yeah, I would feel so frustrated at the end of the day being like, I got nothing done today. Not to say I didn't keep my kid alive, which is an accomplishment. But for someone who is so like busy, like you said, to then not have time for even like the bare minimum of like keeping your house clean and staying on top of laundry, to like not be using this massive part of your brain for whatever it feels like
Yeah.
doing is hard and it manifests in weird ways, you know, like, and it's not ever resentment at my kids. I think that's why I was always worried that like I don't want people to think that I hate my kids, you know, like I would love to just like play with you all day, but I can't. Like I
Like
don't
something
have
not
the
getting done.
capacity for it. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, that's why I think it's important too, like to have a community of moms, like
Mm-hmm.
obviously the Oxford County Moms Club, but I'm also like, part of the excitement of this podcast is that like I'm talking to a lot of moms who are also business owners, and that's like a whole other thing. Not to say there's not like, you know, if I was a stay-at-home mom, I would want a community of stay-at-home moms too, but that's just so not. I tried and I did not thrive at it, and neither did my kid, you know.
I couldn't imagine.
I think another thing that you just said that is so important that is seems to be present in all of us is the second guessing ourselves, right? Like thinking,
Mm-hmm.
oh, should I do this? And when I look back at all the things I have done, it just kind of that was always present, and everything that has become what I consider the successes of my life are just from taking that jump kind of every time, right? So I think it's so important that
100%.
you like look at all the jumps you've taken recently with the
Oh
Moms
yeah, I'm
Club
like
and the
always,
podcast,
yeah.
right? And it was the same
Yeah.
with us. We're just like, well,
Yeah.
I guess we'll give staging a go, like just right. So
Well, yeah, I
we
see actually a lot of like, I see a lot of similarities in like how you guys decided to do that and how me and Britt were like, let's
yeah
do a mom club, you know,
yeah
like we were both interested in marketing and in social media, and both sort of struggled to show up in the real estate realm of that. Um, because it just kind of feels like everyone's doing the same thing, you know, in real estate specifically. Like, because there's only so much you can talk about. Like, how much are you going to talk about the stats before, like,
yeah
you run out of things to talk about? You know, like, you want to talk about the real estate market? No, I don't. I'm a real estate agent and I don't want to talk about the real
yeah
estate market, you know? So, yeah, it's just, I think, and I think that it's important too, like, because it, momming can be so, like, all encompassing. And there are there seems to be sort of argument online right now about like whether moms should just like stay home and take care of their kids and that's your job as a woman, which obviously is not how I feel. Or like I'm still a human who had like a whole life and ideas and a job and the opportunity to express myself in whatever way I wanted to. And that didn't go away when I had a kid. But I
yeah
think there's this like unwritten sort of message that's being sent to moms that like now you're a mom and you like that's your identity. And yeah, it's a part of your identity, but I think a lot of, especially because the first year can be isolating whether you're doing it in COVID or not.
mm-hmm.
So just I think it's important for, you know, people like us to keep showing up, and like it's not perfect. Like a lot of what I do is not perfect. You know, I'll forget to call a client back every now and again, or like I currently actually was supposed to switch the laundry over before I left this morning and definitely didn't. So it's just sitting in my laundry machine right now, you know? And I think just like it's really important, and part of the reason why I stopped talking myself out of doing a podcast, because I now am unashamed of just like showing up as I am in whatever messy state that is, because it's giving all the other moms permission to do the same thing. And I think like
It
that's
feels so
why I was like,
relatable.
It
Like
is.
everybody
I
else.
always feel like I'm attracted to people who share their vulnerabilities. And so
yeah,
recognizing that I feel that way about other people, I assume that most people would be more willing to or eager to talk to me or share with me when they realize that I'm willing to express those things myself, right? So I
yeah, exactly. And I think like, so obviously like from a business perspective, like it's opening the door to build relationships, but also just like from a personal perspective, and like
yeah,
this is your life and you're in control of like how, you know, you walk through your life every single day. And I used to have a really hard time being vulnerable on social media. Everybody does, because you're like, oh my God, am I just oversharing on the internet? Like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But even sharing like the ADHD thing, like the only reason I shared the ADHD thing to begin with is because I feel like it was pretty obvious that I was having like a rough time with my mental health in the winter. Like I couldn't shake it. And it was a combination of a lot of things. Like the weather sucked and everybody was kind of miserable because the weather sucked. And Casey turned 1. And I was just like so struggling. And so the fact that I felt such relief instantly with like one tiny little pill, like I took it and like that day it was like day and night. And so I just was like, as much as like I want to just like, gloss over and I don't want to talk about my medical, situation, I also feel like I struggled for years and didn't say anything. Like, and now I can look back to like me being a kid and be like, man, it was like super obvious, from like childhood that like I had ADHD, but we didn't know then what we know now, right?
So I
So,
think we don't think enough about too, like there probably are every time we post things online, and when I get on my stories and I get excited about stuff, I get really inarticulate and I feel embarrassed about it because
oh,
I
same.
start to
Yeah.
blabber. And I want to be like
Yeah.
a poised lady, and I feel like that just never comes
Yeah.
across. But it's
No. Yeah.
so every time I do stuff like that, there are probably people watching who are assholes about it and start to feel a type of way about me or think whatever, right? But it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
they're not saying any of that stuff to me. If one person does relate to it and thinks, oh, she's being vulnerable, like I feel confident in like talking to her because she's a real person,
Yeah.
then just that one person kind of makes
Right.
it worthwhile, right? Even if there are.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think too, like, then if they think you're whatever, they're not your people anyway. And so, like, what are
Exactly.
you just going to like show up poised and proper and then that person hires you and they meet
Right.
you in real life and they're like a prick,
Yeah.
like, and you're like, oh, now I have this client who's like difficult and I always am full of anxiety when I go meet with them. Like, in my opinion, it's not worth the sale. Like, whereas I think if I just show up as I am I going to do less deals because of it? Maybe, but realistically, what
Probably
I'm
not.
going to do is I'm going to attract the right type of people that
Yeah.
want to work with me, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I've even posted before because I have always struggled to show up as a real estate agent. Like, I don't dress up. I am allergic to everything, so I don't wear makeup. And half the like time I have like huge zits, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like now I'm gonna go on the internet and I look like I'm 15 again, and like I have this barf stain on my sweater from my baby, and like, and I'll go on and kind of talk about how like I'm feeling that, and I'll get messages from like past clients being like, dude, this is why we hired you, because I'm
Yeah.
the same
Exactly.
way and I don't want someone in like, a 30 whatever $300 jacket and high heels to show me a house when I show up in my Birkenstocks and like whatever, and I think like even with this, like I've owned the Selling Oxford branding since 2020, and this account has changed a lot since then. I've been testing and changing different things. And I was looking at my like professional dashboard on Instagram the other day, and I'm like down like 23 followers, but I'm up like 40. And so like that's a net win. And I'm like, as much as you can be like, oh, 23 people think what I'm doing is like annoying and they don't want it in their feed. But 40 people like think it's cool,
Yeah.
And so like, and also like there's lots of people that I like and I don't follow because I'm not going to buy, like, no offense to like every personal trainer either ever, but like I'm not following your
Yeah.
stuff because I'm like so not interested in exercising at this point
Yeah.
in my life. But yeah, it's like I think
But if
because you
they were a
just
person, maybe like this is so as realtors, and if like the personal trainer thing, you're saying the same
mhm.
thing that like with the issue that we were talking about or the point that Erica made, she's not
Oh
interested
yes,
in
exactly.
making a move at all. But
Hmm.
if I come across a personal trainer who is sharing little bits of their authentic self that I find interesting, maybe I will be
Yeah,
following them, right?
that's
Um,
actually very true.
Yeah.
100%. You're exactly right. Yeah.
so I don't
Yeah.
know. I just
Oh,
think there's the the reward probably always outweighs the risk when it comes to sharing. And
yeah.
then obviously we need to be careful about that and thinking about what we're doing. But any opportunity that we do have to share little bits of who we are as people probably
Hmm.
is worthwhile,
Yeah, Yeah, I
the
think so. At
things
least I
that
hope so.
differentiate us from the other people that are in the same industry. And somebody is going to probably see something,
They say too,
yeah.
like people buy from people, not from brands and what they're selling. So it's more about who you are.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like we can wrap up now. That was like, this
A
is
lot.
so cool because I didn't really know what I was getting into with this. And I experienced this with the mom club too, is that like you whenever you conceptualize something, I feel like I always try to like conceptualize it in its entirety. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to cut the clips and it's going to look like this and this is what I'm going to offer, and like, and then that day one I have this like vision for what it's going to be. And then it's way different than that. You get going and it's organic, and so it leads to whatever. That mom club, like we're going to start a thing and now we host events every week, and like I was talking to like city councilors, and like our like MPP reached out because he's concerned about daycare and he wants to talk to me about, what moms are facing because I have access to the moms. And like, if I like was going to go back to myself and Britt in like our early planning meetings of what we were starting, none of that was conceptualized, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you talk yourself out of your idea because it's not perfect or it's not like you don't think people are going to like it, you're actually talking yourself out of like so much cool opportunity, because showing up is like half
That's a
the
perfect example for motherhood too. We have this idea of how it's going to be,
yeah.
and it's probably not at all like that, what we thought it was going
Yeah,
to be
no.
prior to having kids. Like, not at
Yeah,
all. And
right.
every day is a roller coaster, but those moments every day where you realize these people are the greatest little things, they
Yeah.
make it all right.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess it's every
totally.
part
I
of life.
totally agree. Yeah. I think it's like, yeah, I think if I've learned anything just from like doing this, even if like it doesn't go anywhere and I don't like it might, I've literally zero issue if like only 10 people watch every episode of this podcast for the forever and ever and ever. But what I'm learning about myself, about my communication style, and just from like talking to other business owners about their experience is so valuable to me that it's like absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
But if, when I was always like, oh, people aren't going to listen and they're going to be like, who does she think she is? Like, she's like, whatever these imaginary people that don't exist are going to think about me or holding me back. It's actually like a huge, huge opportunity. So I do want to say thank you guys for coming here, because I also just want to like hang out with you guys, but that's hard when you're like a mom to multiple kids and you have all these businesses going. So I'll have to have you back because this was like a really good chat. But before I let you go, we are going to do rapid fire questions. So I'm actually thinking, because there's two of you, how many questions do I have? I don't want you to have time to think about it. So I might just ask you and then you both have to give your answers at the same
Yeah.
time, because I don't want you to like, okay. So are you ready? Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Question number one. What are you binging right now? Like TV or food? One of my guests said her favorite food that she was binging right now.
Too hot to handle for me right now.
My husband just had
What
on the
is
other.
that?
It's on Netflix. It's a really trash TV like show. It's a dating show.
Okay. I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've been trying to watch a show with my husband. Although I like get up, we don't have a TV upstairs, so I get upstairs and I just crash after putting the kids to bed. But my
Yeah.
husband's watching this show
Mhm.
called Boy Swallows Universe, and it's so good. Like, I'm so into it, but I just haven't. That's the on the binge list.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Okay. And what's your favorite song?
I'm listening to a lot of Zach Bryan right now.
I'm always listening to
Yeah.
Zach Bryan, but I think I shared it in my story the other day. The Red Clay Strays have this song called "Wondering Why," and I probably listen to it 80 times a day. Like, that's my thing. I'll find a song I love and I'll just kill it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you like almost certainly have ADHD, Nicole.
I know I do.
Because I do the same thing. I listen to the same song like on repeat. Yeah.
I also love Tyler Childers' "Shake the Frost," and I think he's coming to Rock the Park in London. That song is just so good.
He's so
Anything Tyler
good. Like
Childers, Zach Bryan, that's the vibe right now.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I'm with you there. Okay. If you could visit anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Um, for me right now, I just want to go somewhere warm. I feel like I haven't been
Yeah.
away in so long.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. That's like the
specifically,
new mom thing, hey?
we really want to take our kids to. I've been there tons of times as a kid myself growing up, but we really want to take our kids to Disney at some point soon.
Mm, yeah.
I have another stager friend, internet friend in London, who is taking her daughter on a trip to Paris antiquing this spring, and that just sounds
amazing.
like the dream. Yeah.
Do you think she's gonna write it off as a business expense?
I hope so.
She should.
Yeah,
I
so
hope
my husband
so.
and I went on our honeymoon to Paris, and we spent one day walking around Versailles. Just we're big like into
Hmm.
architecture and design. He is equally. So that was like when I think
Oh
back,
yeah.
that was one of the best days of my life. So I look forward to going back there.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a statement.
it really was. It really was. It was like one of those
Yeah,
perfect
that's
weather days
nice.
where you're like, how did this even happen? Yeah, just pretty idyllic all around.
Yeah. I spent my, this is totally unrelated, but I spent my hundred. So we got married in September, and that September there was like fires everywhere. Like everything was on fire. It was hurricane season. So I think like there was fires in the states like Texas. So we couldn't get to Mexico because you had to like
Oh,
fly around fire. And then we couldn't go to like the Dominican because it was hurricane season. And then there was also something happening in Europe. I can't remember what, but basically they were like, I
you
wouldn't
can't go
travel
anywhere.
anywhere if I was
Yeah.
you. Um, and so we had like 2 weeks just like off work, and we just stayed home and nobody knew we were home. So,
Yeah.
and it was like hot, super hot. So we like bought an inflatable pool from like Canadian Tire and put it
Aw.
on our deck and like stayed home and like drank beer and like
Oh my
made
God.
food and like sat in like an inflatable pool on our deck. It was like,
That's such a good
so
story.
it's very us. Like we're kind of homebodies anyway, but it had been so busy like leading up to the wedding anyway that I was like, this is kind of perfect. But it was like everyone was like, where did you go? And I was like, we actually were home,
Our
but we just like
backyard.
parked our cars in the garage. Yeah.
Aw. I guess my
Okay.
other,
So,
like, I wish I could live in New York City, like, always. Like, that's where I want
oh
to
yeah.
be, always. I lived there for a little while during my
Oh
baking
really?
life. Yeah, and, like, my
Okay.
husband's the same, but there's, like, home is home, but that feels like my second home.
Yeah.
I've also always wanted to go to
That's
Italy.
very
I've
interesting.
been there when he was younger, but I would love to
Yeah.
experience.
Like we went to
Yeah.
the Amalfi Coast for the other half of our honeymoon, and it was like insane, so beautiful.
Yeah. I've only been to Europe once. I went to England. My brother got married in England, actually. Like as a destination wedding. It was so cool.
Wow.
Um, yeah, like in like like a old English manor, and it was like the most beautiful. And also, I was like, oh, come on, like I got married in a backyard,
Yeah,
but just different strokes for different folks, right?
totally.
Anyway, okay, back to rapid fire. Okay, are you morning people or night owls? Okay, pre-motherhood.
Pre-motherhood, I would say night owl because I definitely didn't like to wake up early in the morning. But now
Right.
that it's changed, I go to bed early
Yeah.
and I wake up early.
Same. I used
Yeah.
to bake literally, and I worked in a bar, so I would work at the bar late, and then I would bake all night, and then I'd sleep until like literally 2. Like it was
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah.
And I
Oh,
thought I was never
remember
a
the
morning person, but now when I like still don't feel like I don't enjoy getting up early. Like it's a struggle to get
right.
up, but once I'm up, I'm like, yeah, the morning's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're just surviving, right? You're like, this is
Yeah.
good. This is fine. Yeah. Okay, what are your coffee orders?
I drink tea and coffee. I for a long time didn't
Mm.
drink coffee because it would give me the shakes. But now I feel like I need it and I
Yeah.
drink the regular, like one cream, one sugar.
I just have
Okay,
cream in mine.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh
just
yeah,
cream.
okay. Do either of you have a karaoke song?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't. I have one of the worst singing voices you could ever hear in your life. I wouldn't put anyone.
But that's the point of karaoke, I think. Like, you don't
Yeah.
go to karaoke. Like, if you go to karaoke and there's like one person that just like knocks it out of the park, you're kind of
Oh my
like,
gosh, all my best
what are you
friends
doing
growing
here?
up were in like singing lessons and had these like God-given musical talents, and I was just like,
Yeah.
my best friend Amy used to try to give me singing lessons, and then she'd be like, okay, actually stop. I'm like, yeah, exactly.
I would say I don't have one. If I had to say one, I would probably say a Shania Twain song.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh, that's a
you
good
know,
choice.
Whitney
Because like
Houston,
even,
Celine Dion, you gotta go big for those.
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Like I want like Elton John or something, you know, like I want it to be like a banger. That way, even if I suck, like everyone else is having a good time because the song's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received?
I would say probably something similar to what we were talking about during this podcast, but to just go for it. If you have an idea, it's probably other people are thinking about it or would be interested in it. So to just go for it.
Yeah.
Mine comes from Wayne Gretzky along the same lines. Like, you miss 99%. I'm just kidding, but like, it's true.
No, and I think
It
you're
really is
right.
that thought, right? Like, it's
Well,
the same thing. If
I
you
yeah.
don't try, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, like something that's important that like I recently like heard someone say is that like nobody's thinking about you as much as you think that they are. They're just worried
Exactly.
about their own shit. Like I'm never like looking at like your Instagram, Sarah, and being like, "Oh my God, Sarah!" Like I'm always just like way in my own head about like feeling insecure about myself, you know?
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Are you a planner or do you wing it? I feel like you're both planners. Are you both planners?
Yeah.
I think I'm a
Yeah,
little bit of both in different aspects. Yeah.
right. I didn't mean to look at you like this when I was like, I'm
No.
obviously not a planner myself, but
Like an abstract planner who also ends up just winging it.
yeah, like I know where I want to be, but I'm not making a plan to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm more of
Um,
a personality to plan
I
out.
am totally
everything.
type A, but then, yeah, I don't know.
I'm not
Type A
type
about
A.
certain things.
I think that's also why the mom club worked so well is because Britt is type A and I'm not. And so
Yeah.
like she got to thrive in all of her like lists and calendars and whatever. And like she had me to be like, this is what you have to do now. And I was like, sweet, because I like totally forgot about half of that stuff that you're talking about. Okay. Do you like to text or do you prefer talking on the phone?
I think it depends what it's about. Sometimes if it's a lengthy conversation or something, you need to have, because I feel like sometimes text can be perceived in different ways, I guess. So
Totally.
just
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
I feel
Hmm.
like I was a total text only prior to becoming a realtor, and it
Yeah.
feels a lot more necessary to be a realtor who talks on the phone sometimes. And you kind of
Yeah.
have to feel out other people, right? But
Yeah.
I think I'm a lot more comfortable with talking on the phone than I ever was prior to being a realtor.
Yeah, it took me quite a long time to feel comfortable because I always felt like, especially at the beginning of my career, I felt like agents were calling me to try and like trick me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like,
Yeah. Oh, I
like, because
feel
they
that.
want to like get, you know, info out of you that you
They
wouldn't
want
share
to
via
test
text.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'd like ask you a question and you'd be like, I don't think I'm allowed to answer that
Yeah.
question, you know,
Totally.
or they'd like people with like really good sales skills that can like get you in that like sales maze and you don't know how to like navigate your way through that. I felt that a lot at the beginning. And I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, can you just send this to me in an email so I can like think
Yeah.
about, you know, like what I
Having a
want to
response.
say. Yeah, exactly. But no, you're right. And it's funny too. Like, I don't know if you've come across this, but like sometimes you'll do a deal with like a millennial and you'll like text them and they'll get back to you the next day. And then like they text you like the next, like it's like more millennial style communication. And then the other
Yeah.
times you do a deal and it's like only over the phone and it's
Oh,
like
yeah. Yeah.
very, you have to like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's totally changed mine too. And I think too, like, as we are getting older and like more comfortable in who we are, I feel a lot less like I used to have a lot of phone anxiety. And now, as I've like embraced my like I am who I am
Yeah.
phase of my life, it's like less daunting. Okay, last one. If you had to eat only one food for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
I would probably pick pizza. I
Mm,
like
yeah,
I don't know though. I don't know. I've always been a pizza person. I just think that I've always been a bread person, and then it has all the any
same.
toppings you want, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
You know, when if I wanted to live in anxiety and feeling shitty but enjoying my food, I would eat only baked goods for the rest of my life.
Thank you both for coming on today. I am just like, I'm like a few things. Like, I'm excited that we just got to like, hang out and be friends again for a little while. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. Yeah, I just really appreciate your perspective on like all things motherhood and business. And I look forward to having you on another time so we can continue this conversation. But yeah, thanks for coming. And before we go, I just want to give you the opportunity to tell all of our listeners where they can find you on social media.
So for Whitewood Design, you can find us at whitewooddesign.co on Instagram or whitewooddesign.ca for our website. And then my husband for the contracting side also has whitewood.contracting on Instagram.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And I'm Nicole Shell Real Estate.